I specifically want to end this interview by talking about the French pension system and the planned reforms. According to the Tagesschau, Germany's leading primetime news media network, they state the reason why Emmanuel Macron is drawing so much resentment from the population due to his pension reforms is the fact that his administration has done a poor job in communicating these reforms, and that there are only two choices. It's either the retirement age has to be increased or the contributions in the pension system has to be increased. They also brought up, and this is quite interesting, sociological differences between German and French workers. And they stated, and let me quote them here, working longer is seen as imposition by many French citizens. Work is perceived as a burden, unquote. In your view, are there only two choices for governments across Europe? That either you have to increase the retirement age or you have to increase the contributions in the pension system?
No, it was never the only choice. It's not the only choice now. The notion, by the way, that the French have a peculiar idea that work is an imposition, that reflects, and I don't mind saying it, sheer ignorance on the part of whoever writes this nonsense. I'm a professional economist. I teach economic theory. The dominant theory in the world today is called neoclassical economics. It's what's taught in German and French and other universities. One of the central commitments, theoretical commitments of neoclassical economics is that labor, in the language of economics, is a disutility. Labor, in short, is a burden. And people undertake the burden of labor in order to acquire the money, allowing them to consume, and the consumption is the compensation, the good thing, for the bad thing, the labor you've had to do. There's nothing French about that. That assumption that labor is a burden and an imposition is taught at Oxford, Cambridge, University in Germany, Dusseldorf, wherever. You know, to make this a French phenomena shows you a person writing either who doesn't know what he's talking about or is so busy pushing an agenda that he forgets even the basics of what he's talking about. Having said that, look, if you have a population that is shrinking in terms of the young people who work and who therefore contribute a portion of their income into the pension fund, and you have at the same time a large elderly population that isn't working anymore and pulling assets out of the pension fund, yeah, if that's the way you've set up your pension fund, by the way, you don't have to do that, and not all countries do, but the United States does, and I assume European countries do, then you have a problem. You haven't got enough money coming in, and you have so much going out. And if you think like this, then you think, well, then I have to either pull more money out of the people working, they have to put in more, or I have to give less to the elderly. Macron has proposed, since he's an idiot, he has proposed doing the second thing. I'm going to give less to the older people. How am I going to do it? I'm going to make them work another 2 years before I allow them to retire. This is very simple, but it is completely wrong. Why? I'm going to now give you 2 or 3 alternatives. There are more. They just don't want you to know about them because then you won't think about them and you won't agitate for them. Okay, number 1, even if you believe that you have to bring more people in, more money into the system, if, for example, you don't want to hurt the elderly who've given you a lifetime of work and who have contributed into the system to get the retirement and to have made all their plans, where they live, what house they bought, what commitments to their children, all of that is thrown aside for 2 years because Emmanuel Macron, overlooks his foie gras lunch to make this idea, wow, here's an alternative. Change the way you raise the money. Stop raising the same amount from everybody, regardless of their income. You could have a progressive pension contribution system. If you're making €1,000,000 a year, your contribution to the pension can go up, whereas if you're making €20,000 a year, it doesn't. Wow, that would bring more money in, and you wouldn't have to lay off, 2 years of people's. But the idea that the only choice, this is like being accosted in an alley, in a dark alley, by a man who has in one hand a gun and in the other hand a knife, and who says to you, I'm going to kill you, but you can choose. It's your choice. I'll shoot you or I'll stab. Now, the person who begins to scratch his head and trying to decide between them, we know is lost. The person with half a brain says, I don't accept this choice. I'm not going to permit you to determine that my two choices are that, because I will end up dead either way, and I don't want that. So don't tell me that's my only choice. I can throw a stone at you. I can whistle. I can call a policeman. There are 100 things I can try to do. They may not work, but don't tell me there are only two. Macron insults the basic intelligence of the French people. They may not say it, but they all feel, even if they can't put it into words. I'm an economist, this is my job, I can lay it out for you. But people who haven't the training or don't think about these things, they kind of understand they're being, what we call in America, hustled. They're being flim-flammed. They're being maneuvered by some quick-talking faker, con man, we call that. Macron is a con man politician. He's so poor at it, he can't even wrap it in better packaging. We would be better at it here. We have an advertising industry way better than them. And what is he doing? And that's why, by the way, he comes in a long line. Other governments have tried to do this with the pension in France. They've all failed. They tried to do what Macron did. People came out. People learned the lesson. Fight. But even if he wins, the anger and the bitterness of what he's trying to do, that will live long after him. And that will be part of the history that builds in the French working class the kind of rage that they're capable of and the kind of political action. We're going to see more of that. And let me also tell you, Americans were affected by the Gilets jaunes movement 2 or 3 years ago, and they're being affected by what they're seeing. It is common among labor unions in this country these days to say, why aren't we doing what the Portuguese and the French and the Spanish and why are we so passive? That will have its effects.
Professor Richard Wolff, professor of economics and author of numerous books, the latest being The Sickness is the System. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Zane, and thank you for having programs like this. We're having more and more of them in the United States, and they're learning from people like you, and it's having a wonderful effect in changing this society. Very difficult moment, but full of opportunities, the likes of which the left has not seen in this country for a long time.